In today's video, I'm going to show you how to do a brake fluid change on a 2006 Lexus IS350. And this is going to be similar to a lot of cars out there. So you'll want to get yourself some .3 brake fluid, and .3 is used for most street cars. .3 and .4 are compatible. .4 has a little bit higher boiling point, so if you do a lot of spirited driving, you could use .4. I will stick with the manufacturer recommendation of .3, and I'm going to do a one-man brake bleed job using this kit. There's a lot of vacuum kits out there. This is OEM Tools part number 25136. And for many years, I did a two-man brake bleed job where one person, a helper, would sit in the car and press the pedal as I cracked open the bleeder valve on the brake cylinder on each wheel. And then I would say, okay, close the valve, and I say, let go of the pedal, and then pump again. This method is easier, one man, and you just pull a vacuum, open the valve, and pull the fluid out. So I'll show you how easy it is to do and the order that we're going to do it in. So on this car and a lot of cars, the order is the furthest wheel away from the master brake cylinder. So that would mean start with the right rear, right front, left front. That's a generic order that works on most cars. Honda and Acura recommend doing it the opposite. They recommend doing the wheel closest to the cylinder. So do left front, right rear, left rear. Don't know why they recommend that, but they designed the car. So if you don't get bubbles in your brake system, then it's not a big deal. If you're chasing a bubble, you can try different patterns depending on the design of your braking system. A lot of them are 4-channel ABS, so you can try bleeding in an X pattern. Each wheel has its own pipe to the ABS unit in the engine bay. So you can do one wheel on the left, one wheel on the right side of the car. So the theory is, in a brake failure situation, maybe one of the brake lines bursts, then you'll still at least have one wheel on the left, one wheel on the right that can stop the car. You might have a 3-channel ABS where each front wheel has its own pipe to the ABS, but both rear brakes share one pipe to the ABS. So those are the different systems I've seen out there, but the majority of the cars out there, you can just do the standard bleed pattern of furthest away from the master cylinder, working your way to the closest. So right rear, right front, left front. That's the way I'm going to do this car today. Another thing to keep in mind is brake fluid is highly corrosive. It is a solvent, and it can remove paint from your car. So don't spill any on your paint. If you get any on your hands, don't touch the hood, the doors, things like that. Clean your hands off because you will damage the paint on the car. On this car, we need a 10mm wrench for the wheel bleed valves, and you want to use the box end. And if you have a line wrench, 10mm line wrench, you can get a better grip. Sometimes these things are under the car, they get a little corroded, so you want to get a good grip on it. And this is nice because you can go around the brake bleed hose, and then if you got to adjust it. Lastly, if you only have an open end wrench, you could use the open end side, but you don't have as much grip, so you may end up stripping it. So I've always used a box end, and that's always worked for me. I do have a line wrench now, but I don't know. We'll see if we use it. This is old reliable. One is a coat hanger to hang the brake vacuum kit bottle from the suspension coil or something under the car. So cut up a coat hanger and use it as a little hanger tool. So the first thing I did is just drive the car up onto my Rhino ramps and up onto some wood in the back simultaneously. So all 4 wheels came off the ground so I can get my jack under the front because it's way back under the engine, and in the back it's near the differential. So I will crack the lug nuts loose now before I get the wheels off the ground. I'll just crack them all loose, and then I'll jack up the car with my floor jack. Okay, I took my 21mm socket and broke all the lug nuts loose, all 20 of them. And you're probably asking, why are you removing the wheels to bleed the brakes? Remember what I said, brake fluid's highly corrosive, and if you spill some on your expensive wheels, it's going to eat the paint, whatever finish you got, clear coat, it's going to eat it right off. So take the time, remove the wheels, do it right. You can wash your wheels while you got them off and clean the inner barrel, polish them up, and then put them back on when you're done. Okay, just like I showed on my last video, to jack the rear of the car, I put a 2x4 under this structural piece of steel just in front of the differential. Then I put my floor jack under it and jack up the rear and put the rear on jack stands first before I do the front. Okay, so now I have both sides of the rear of the car safely supported on jack stands. Right here, just where you would put your jack that comes in the trunk for changing a flat tire. Just in front of that, this is a solid piece of steel. That's where you want to put your jack stands. You have to be very careful in this car where you put jack stands, because you can bend things and damage your car. Let's go to the front of the car now and jack under the engine. Okay, I've showed this in a few of my videos, but it's worth showing again. Under the engine, this is the oil pan. Do not jack here. There is a solid piece of steel right here. This is all plastic, so I marked it with blue tape. This is where I'm going to put my floor jack. And I have these hockey pucks to put in the saddle so I don't mark it up. You could put a small piece of 2x4 or just get yourself a hockey puck and just lay one hockey puck there. This is something I made for my Corvettes, so I am going to use it for this car too. And it's just to keep the jack from damaging the car. There we go. A single hockey puck is all you really need. So I will jack it up in the front here and then put the front of the car on jack stands so we can get all four wheels off the car. Okay, on each side for the front jack stands, look for your oxygen sensor, and you'll see this subframe, a piece of box-shaped metal. Right here is where you can put your jack stand. So I'm going to put a piece of cloth on it so I don't mark up the car. To protect the undercoating there. Right here would be good. Do the same on the other side and lower the car into the jack stand so all four wheels are off the ground. Okay, so now I have all four wheels off the car. We can begin bleeding the brake fluid out. Okay, now under the hood, first thing I like to do is to suck out the old brake fluid from the master cylinder. I'm going to take off this panel just to make it easier for you guys to see. You don't have to remove this, but I'll do it for the camera. Okay, so here's our master cylinder. Here's our reservoir. Here's our ABS unit. And you can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4 lines going out to the four wheels. We have 2 lines going in, so it is a dual diagonal braking system. So if one line breaks, you still have one wheel on each side left. That's the theory of how these work. So what we're going to do first is suck out all the dirty fluid. And let me show you here that it's a little dirtier on one side than the other. So we don't want contaminated fluid. What happens when fluid gets old? It can absorb moisture. If it's .3 or .4, it can absorb water, and water will be compressible, and the boiling point is also affected by that. So, you know, if you boiled your brakes going down a mountain road and this fluid boiled, the water would boil off, then you'd have air in your lines from the oxygen in the water, and that would be bad. You would lose your brakes. So contamination is also bad. It can plug up lines. So this fluid really should be as clean and clear as possible. And you want to do this. There's no real recommendation on how frequently, but this car has 70,000 miles now. It's say it's a 2006, so it's 18 years old. And I bought the car pre-owned, so it has never been changed to my knowledge with 70,000 miles in 18 years. So it's high time that we do it to get clean fluid in there, because really no brake job is absolutely complete until you've changed your fluid too, because it is another potential point of failure. But it's not something that's urgent to do. If you live in a place with a lot of moisture in the air, maybe you live in the Rust Belt of the US and a lot of snow and rain and all that good stuff, you probably want to change your brake fluid more frequently. I live in an extremely dry climate, hardly any rain or moisture, so brake fluid lasts a long time. You also want to use it from a clean container. You don't want to use contaminated brake fluid going in. So let's take the rubber cap off of here. There we go. Set that aside. And let's get our new tool and suck out as much of the old fluid as we can, but do not expose the bottom of the reservoir, because you don't want to get air into your ABS unit. That would be really hard to bleed out, but we'll just get the dirty stuff out here, fill it up with clean fluid, then go to the wheels and start bleeding the fluid out until we see clear fluid at each wheel. So in our new tool, it comes with this bottle with a rubber gasket. You want to put the little rubber gasket in the groove here. Not too crazy about their design. Okay, got that rubber seal on there. Put this short hose, put this together. There we go. So you have the hose going in there, and you'll want to get some fluid up to that level. So if you happen to suck anything back, you won't get bubbles into your brakes. And it says 2 pumps. So we're going to connect our hose to our pump here, and then another hose here would go to each wheel cylinder brake bleeder. This is what it's going to look like when it's put together. And then depending on your brake bleed valve size, you want to get the appropriate size hose. And they give you some in the kit. I'm going to use some other that I have that's clear, because I'm not going to wash it afterwards. I'm just going to throw away this hose on this side. This one's only going to have air in it. This one's going to have dirty brake fluid, so I don't want to save that. And then I'm going to plug this up and show you. You just pump it up to like 15 psi and make sure it's holding steady. And then when you crack open the bleed screw, it's going to start sucking fluid, and then you watch it go down, and fluid's going to fill up this bottle with dirty brake fluid. And then you pump it up a little more. Don't let this gauge go to 0. And then after each wheel cylinder, go back to your master cylinder reservoir and top it up with new clean fluid. Because if it gets too low, you're going to suck air through your master cylinder and get it into your ABS unit. 1/4 inch inside diameter hose from Home Depot, your local fish aquarium store, wherever. Make sure it's clear so you can see the fluid. This is 3/16, so I stretched it a little bit, but I think 1/4 inch ID would do just fine. So there is a little strainer you'll need to remove to get your hose in there. So just grab that and lift it out. Get the strainer out. I just got this little pick in there and turn it counterclockwise to get it out. There we go. See in there how dirty our fluid is. Let's get our little hose in there and start sucking out that dirty fluid. Just remember to leave a little on the bottom. Don't suck it totally dry. Okay. So to get rid of old brake fluid, you can just recycle it the same that you do with your used motor oil. Just put it in a container and take it back to the auto parts store and put it in their recycle big drum. Okay, using brand new brake fluid, I'm going to top up the reservoir before I start bleeding the wheel cylinders. Okay, that's right about to the full line. You can see the full line on this side over here. Just above this big seam in the plastic is the full line. Now on your back wheel, right here, we're on the right rear. Take off this rubber cap so you can bleed the brake fluid. There we go. Set that aside because you're going to want to reuse it. That keeps this hole from getting plugged up with dirt and debris. That could cause problems trying to bleed your brakes if it's all plugged shut. And then get your 10mm wrench or your line wrench, whatever you're going to use, and put that on there so that you can turn it counterclockwise. So I'm going to pull this direction, and then get your vacuum tube on that nipple and then hang your bottle somewhere, and you'll be ready to go. So here is my setup. So I've got it hanging, the bottle, I've got my wrench, and I've got my pump. So I'm not going to be able to hold this light at the same time. There's nowhere good to hang this light. So I will pump up some vacuum here to 15 psi. There we go. And now I'm going to crack open that valve just a little. If you open it too far, you're going to get air coming in, and you'll see a lot of bubbles. So we should only see fluid, maybe a few little bubbles. And then we're going to keep pumping this up to keep the pressure up so it doesn't go to zero. Watch that bottle so it doesn't overfill, because you don't want to get fluid going into your vacuum pump. Okay, that's what we're going to do. So here's my setup. I crack it open, keep some vacuum pressure on there. Get the fluid coming out. I really should have had that short hose in there submerged. It'll be submerged in a minute. Fluid coming out is actually pretty clean already. If you open the bleeder valve too far, you're going to get air from around the threads on the bleeder valve itself. That hose is almost submerged now. That's all the way closed. I'm probably getting, there we go. That's good. Very few bubbles. That's what we want to see. On the driver's side, to do the left rear, pump up pressure, just crack this open. When this bottle starts to get full, it's time to go check the reservoir again. They're about the same size. Seeing pretty clear brake fluid coming through. Some of these bubbles are from the threads on the bleeder screw, so don't want to open it too far. And some of it might be leakage around this. I'm using a 3/16 ID hose. 1/4 inch might work too, but I'm using 3/16. It's looking pretty clear. Let's close that off. Yeah, see, even though it's closed, still seeing air bubbles. So it's probably leakage from around the hose itself. Hard to say. The real test is when we are finished and we start the car. So we have air pressure in the master cylinder, vacuum, and we pump the brakes a few times to make sure we really have brakes before we do our test drive. On the passenger right front. So take this cover off, pretty big cover. Set that aside, and let's get hooked up here. Let's crack this open. Hopefully you can see. Slow down this flow. Okay, we're at the driver's side left front. Let's pump up some air. ready to crack open this valve. Keep an eye on our pressure vacuum. Fluid looks pretty clean. So as long as we got vacuum pulling out, air can't go back in. Just don't open this too far so you get air in through the threads of the bleeder valve. Okay, I think we are done bleeding the brake. You can see our reservoir is down a little bit after all that bleeding. And so let's top it up. The full mark is on the side. You just have to be between the low and the high, or min and max. As you can see, new brake fluid is completely clear. Okay, so we're full. Before we put the cap on, let's put our strainer back in. Just clean it up with some brake fluid if it's dirty. And put that little strainer in. I'll show you. And it kind of goes off center. There's a little ridge you got to get under and then turn it. So there we go. That is in there. Okay, now that our strainer is put back in, now we can put our cap back on. Rubber cap. There, that is on. Okay, so let's get in the car and see if we have pedal pressure with the engine running. Car has 70,057 miles. Pump the pedal a few times. It feels solid. Okay, I think we can close everything up now and go for a test drive. Put this cover panel back on, and we've got our bleed caps on all four wheels. Let's put the wheels back on and torque the lug nuts. I like to torque mine to 100 foot-pounds. Stands. Now we're going to lower the jack with the tires back onto the Rhino ramps. We've only got the lug nuts hand tight right now. I have not torqued them. I'm going to get all four wheels onto the ramps and boards before I do that. Back down, I just jacked it up to remove the jack stands, lower it onto the wood. Okay, all four wheels are in contact with either ramps or pieces of wood, so now it's time to torque all 20 lug nuts in a crisscross pattern to 100 foot-pounds. So I am back from a successful test drive. No mushy pedal. It's solid, so no air in the system. A great success. Job done.